Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, and Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive, and all of the things that are AFC Championship week around here. I've said a lot of things around here. I don't know that I've envisioned what downtown Baltimore would look like at 6:15, 6:30, if somehow Lamar Jackson does a somersault to beat the Kansas City Chiefs 36-35, although that's never been done before. We're going to be doing amazing things here, not just this week, but through the Super Bowl. We're doing something called a Cup of Super Bowl. It is a crab cake row. So instead of going to Las Vegas, and we'll be writing about that, and you can read about that, no matter where the Ravens go, we are going to be beginning on Monday, the 5th of February, at Fadley's at Lexington Market. Tuesday will be at Costas. Wednesday will be at Coco's. Thursday, we will be at State Fair in Catonsville. And then on Friday at Pappas in Cockeysville. Hopefully it is one giant purple pep rally. I still have a handful of Raven scratch-offs to give away, our friends at Window Nation. And the Maryland Lottery coming together with our friends at Jiffy Lube to put together Crab Cake Row and a Cup of Soup or Bowl. I don't know if this guy's going to be here or not. We're going to let him make the predictions later on in the week. Luke Jones joins us now after a jubilant, spirited, memorable, never done before effort by the Baltimore Ravens in dispatching the Houston Texans. I'll tell you what, Luke, we're not going to do a whole lot of post game here because it's over with and everybody's so on to Taylor Swift right now. And whether Jason Kelsey will be drinking a Natty Boh or not when he rips his shirt off around 5 o'clock on Sunday here, although the weather was going to be a little warmer. It's been a magic carpet ride, right? I mean, everything the team sort of promised along into October and November. Now we're there. They have to win this game. We've lost this game a couple of times on the road, never at home. But, this is what it's all about. This is, as Bill Parcells once said, this is why you lift all them weights.
No question about it, Nestor. And we're talking about something that's going to take place in Baltimore for the first time in 53 years. I mean, it was way back when the Johnny Unitas and the Colts at Memorial Stadium beat the Oakland Raiders in the inaugural AFC Championship game, mind you, after the merger and AFL, NFL became AFC, NFC, and
That was
the
Lamar Hunt.
Colts.
This is Lamar Jackson. Different
Yeah,
Lamar.
the Colts moved from the NFL to the AFC, and here we are, 53 years later. I think if anyone had told my dad at the time, who was about 20 years old, about to turn 20, that Baltimore would not host another one of those, and it would be another franchise, probably would have had a hard time believing it. But what a special week for the city. What a special week for the Baltimore Ravens. First time they've hosted the AFC Championship game. And we talked about it. We started talking about this 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we talked about the fact that a Super Bowl is never coming here. So as it pertains to the NFL, as it pertains to what the Ravens can do playing a game at home, it doesn't get any bigger than this. So I think everyone should savor it for that reason. But there's a lot of excitement about the task at hand, especially coming off of a 34-10 win and a 24-0 outburst after halftime, which was unsettling. It was unnerving at halftime. I mean, I'm walking around in the press box. You could see some team officials were nervous. Certainly media, there was a lot of nervous energy of, are the Ravens going to do this again? And lo and behold, they came out
I
and they
stood in that
dominated.
buffet line. I know that energy.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's the playoffs, right? I
I've
mean,
looked at Pat Moriarty, not lately. I remember how nervous Nelly, Joe Ortiz, and George Kokinis would be pacing the floor like Fred Flintstone when Wilma was pregnant.
yeah. Well, I mean, think how nervous fans get, and I mean, the team's going to be even more nervous, and they have something directly riding on that in terms of when you think about playoff shares and all the different things that go into that. So, lots of excitement, lots of great energy this week. And yes, there will be a lot of nervous energy on Sunday as, let's face it, the inevitable Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs coming to town. We've been saying it for a while as mediocre, relatively speaking, that the Chiefs looked over the course of the season. We all remember what they looked like on Christmas. There was always that caveat. It's still Andy Reid. It's still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Travis Kelsey. It's still the defending Super Bowl champion. And you have to give them credit for how they went up to Buffalo and took care of business and played, had to be their best game of the season. So The Ravens need to be ready. There's no doubt about that. The Ravens are going to be they are favored in this game and should be because they've been the better team over the course of the season. But you are going up against the team that's been the gold standard ever since Tom Brady left New England. So not going to be easy, but you'd like to think Lamar Jackson and company are up to the task after breaking through against Houston and winning in the divisional round and putting to rest all that talk about 2019 and that Titans loss. At the very least, what Saturday did is we can stop talking about that. Now it's just a matter of got to go out and beat the defending champions, which really is the way it should be if you want to get to Las Vegas and you want to finish the story.
Well, I mean, if they've had the easiest path, first things first, they didn't play 2 weeks ago at all, right? So when other teams like Dallas were taking a dirt nap and teams were getting out of the way, they did not have that problem. Watching Detroit and San Francisco play over the weekend, specifically San Francisco, who sort of squeaked by a little bit. I mean, even the Lions sort of squeaked by. It wasn't an easy game at all. And Baker Mayfield made it a game for a little while, made us nervous. The Ravens have waxed both of those teams, right? So like beating Kansas City, but Kansas City was like, had their number for a little while early on. It was a long time ago. It was such a plague ago. And that was before Odell came here and Tyreek Hill left there. And the salary cap blues got to Kansas City after the champagne showed up for Patrick Mahomes and whatnot. This whole thing is dreamy, right? But the only thing that offsets it is Kansas City this week, right? Because you think if you get through this, look, I don't know if they'll lose to Detroit or San Francisco, but you're going to spend 2 weeks thinking they're going to win. There'll be no argument here next week if we see either of those teams, especially if the Ravens win by 10 points and beat the Chiefs and, win 27-17 and run the ball at the end and not make mistakes, do all those things you want to see a Super Bowl team do, see this team do. There's nobody that watched the Lions game that would think they're going to give the Ravens a game. And there's nobody that watched the 49ers game that would look at Brock Purdy and say, yeah, I'm going to bet on him instead of Lamar. Like this thing is really setting up in a wicked way to be the Super Bowl this week. And I know by the way, it's the 23rd anniversary of the original Super Bowl, the original Purple Rain. I got Brandon Stokely coming on this week. I got Brian Billick coming on. I got Kim Herring coming on. I got Marvin coming on. I also have Joe Flacco coming on this week. So we'll talk about the second Purple Rain as well through all of this. But I think about the last dance with Ray and going on the road and beating Manning and beating Brady and what a hard road that was. And I'm not saying this isn't a hard road, but watching those teams slug it out on Sunday night, I was real glad the Ravens didn't have to see the Bills and the Chiefs. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, and the Ravens, they earned that opportunity, right? I mean, that's what's so funny. And John Harbaugh alluded to this a little bit. I don't know if it was last week or during the bye week, and he talked about the fact that when you earn the number one seed, when you have home field advantage and you're not playing wild card weekend, I mean, really, if you talk about it in literal terms, that's a playoff win right there, right? You don't have to play that round, so you make it through. Just like we talked about with the Orioles, as much as there was that rest factor, the rust factor in terms of waiting for the Rangers, they didn't have to play that best of three wild card rounds. So, that's where Lamar's playoff legacy was always complicated. Not that anyone was just going to arbitrarily add 2 wins to his total, but being the MVP of the league, being so dominant during the regular season in 19 and this year, they didn't have to play wild card games. So yeah,
it's all Joe Flacco did in his career.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And look, I mean that's not even trying to compare the two. It's just,
we drank a lot more beer. We had a lot more fun when they played wild card.
Rode a few more buses, right? I mean, absolutely. So you look at it through that lens. I mean, they avoided that. You're right. So it's great that they didn't have to play Buffalo and Kansas City. Not to say that they couldn't have beaten both, but you do have this easier path. And we talk about the road. It hasn't been the road. They're at home, and again, they earned that. They did all the work over the course of the regular season to be in that position. But yeah, I think you look at this, and not that you want to make too many assumptions, because when they played the Lions, that was so long ago. We can all remember the Ravens being blown out by the Denver Broncos in December of 2012, and then they went out to Mile High, and it was a different story, right? So as much as you try not to play that game, sure, I think there's going to be a perception this week, and it's not even about the the teams top to bottom, the rosters, although the Ravens, it would certainly fit, but it comes down to quarterback play. Which quarterbacks are the best quarterbacks remaining? It's the two in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes, who's been the gold standard, and Lamar, who's been the MVP of the league this year. So there's no question that the way this is going to work out, I mean, the Ravens will certainly be favored. And if Kansas City, after beating Buffalo, does the unthinkable here locally and beats the Ravens, yeah, they're going to be perceived as, okay, the Chiefs are back. They messed around in the regular season. They were sleepwalking. They looked unimpressive on offense, but hey, look what they did in January. They're still the Chiefs. So yeah, I think there's going to be a perception about this game, the winner of this game going into Las Vegas, going into Super Bowl 58 and having an advantage. But that said, the Ravens can't be thinking about that at the moment. They have to be preparing for a Kansas City team that we've talked about it. Their defense better than it was in their Super Bowl years, and an offense that certainly hasn't been as explosive and has had its issues in the red zone, although they certainly finished drives on Sunday against Buffalo at a higher degree than they have in recent weeks. But, it's the Chiefs. It's Andy Reid. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Kelsey. I mean, go down the list of guys, Chris Jones on the defensive side of the ball. So the Ravens going to have to go out and play a strong football game. I'll say this much. The Ravens need to play a more complete 60 minutes than they did against Houston, where, hey, they killed them in the second half. There's no questioning that. But let's face it, that first half, there was some frustration. There was definitely, it was unnerving. I mean, Lamar Jackson, offered some four-letter words in the halftime, locker room and all of that. So they need to come out faster, and I think they will. From the standpoint of, there was a little bit of a rust factor that I think's inevitable when you're playing your first real game in 3 weeks. So they weathered that, but you certainly want to start faster against Kansas City because, a little bit different if, you come out of the gate a little bit slow and your offense is a little bit slow against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who, as much as I think we're going to focus on Lamar versus Mahomes, obviously, I also do really look forward to the opportunity for this defense, this Ravens defense that was terrific on Saturday night. They'll get a shot to enhance their legacy going up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So much excitement, Nestor. I mean, we're going to continue to talk about it all week. I mean, nationally, the Lamar versus Mahomes storyline is going to be out there. Taylor Swift, yeah, that's going to be there too, although I'm not going to be focusing nearly as much on that. But boy, just a really exciting week and such an amazing opportunity for the Baltimore Ravens.
Let's go back to the Houston game because we're not going to do a lot of this week. I mean, we're going to be looking forward, and certainly Luke is here, by the way. We are doing an incredible promotion. It's going to be a mouthful. It's going to be a lot to tell you about, but we're doing live radio for the first time in a long time. We're going to be live from 9 to 5 all of a cup of soup or bowl week. Begins on February 5th. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I do have a handful of Ravens scratch-offs. John Martin told me they're still really valid for at least another 6 months. So if I have a few of them, even though it's out of season, I'm like, it's not out of season anymore. We got people actually throwing footballs during the game on Sunday at the AFC Championship game to win $10,000. Our friends at Window Nation, 866-90 Nation, putting this on, as well as our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, where I had my oil changed about 2 weeks ago. I actually had my oil changed across from Curio Wellness and Foreign Daughter at the York Road location by the Nautilus, right by the Royal Farms at Timonium and York Road. So there's a Jiffy Lube right there, right by Michael's, right around the corner. I snuck into. So big appreciation to our clients and our sponsors and our friends and our community. We're doing this for the Maryland Food Bank. I'm going to tell longer stories about this, but we're going to feature 100 charities. If you have a charity that you think should be featured 2 weeks from now, please email me, ness@baltimorepositive.com. We're going to be at Fadley's on Monday. We're going to be at Costas on Tuesday. We're going to be at Coco's on Wednesday. We're going to be at State Fair in Catonsville on Thursday. And then on Friday, we're going to make our way up to Pappas in Cockeysville. All along, I was believing this is going to be a week long of live purple pep rallies. All along, I think that the Ravens have the ability to beat Patrick Mahomes this week in the AFC Championship game. But Luke, before I dive into this, it was halftime on Saturday, and the feeling that it was macabre, right? Because like you're getting in line with a whole bunch of nervous people. There's a couple of Houston media people there. Chad Steele's looking like somebody swallowed a cow. Like everybody's there in line. It's quiet. I remember what this is like when the home team's it's nervous and it's a playoff game. I remember the Colts game night, right, from '06. Peyton Manning was there, gave me the shakes the other day just seeing him and his kid there. It's 10-10. The halftime presentation of the game was a complete 14 and a half minute referral on Lamar and 2018-19 and Titans and Bills and what happened before. I mean, the whole world was talking about it, right? It's the first game of the weekend. The Ravens are the favorite. Dude, it's like Duke being in trouble in the in the play-in game or something, right? Like it was a little crazy. That first half, the rust versus rest, and I think more than anything, the Ravens not desire, but their will to want to throw the football and make Lamar that guy. And it feels to me like in the second half, it looked a lot more like run, 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 and you can't stop us and you won't stop us. And we might pass and Lamar might run. I don't know. That felt a little different than the way a second quarter or even a third quarter of any game in the middle of the season would feel, where you didn't always feel like Lamar was going to take off. But I guess as we get toward the end of the year, Lamar running for 100 yards, that would have been a good bet up at Hollywood Casino last week, because if they get in trouble, it's what they know and it's what they do well. And I continue to say it. It's their best play. It's an indefensible play if you're asleep for it, and there's no way you can be awake for it in every down and distance. And Monken's been smart enough to play it that way, and Lamar's been great enough to drop back left-handed, to have sleight of hand now almost on the level of Flacco's. Like, that ball fake on the 4th and 1, nobody saw the ball. And how could they not be thinking he could do that when he's him, and he got away with it and didn't just get away with it, almost had a touchdown out of it, right? It's just one play, one distinction that your defense falls asleep, and he can do something to you that nobody in the history of the game can do. And when the game's tight, it's not a bad idea to run him 4 times and see that one of them gets your first down.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing to apologize for. It's what makes him as special and unbeatable as he can be when he's playing at his best. I mean, that's just the reality.
Well, he'd be offended by that because he is a running back. At that moment, he's the best running back in the game that is also a quarterback, right? I mean, and a pretty good quarterback too. But that running back part of him is something, I don't know. I don't feel that way watching them when they're playing in the regular season, that he wants to run anymore, where it felt like 5 years ago, it wasn't their bread and butter. It was their binky. It's not anymore, but it can be when you need it to be. And when it is, they'll beat your ass. And then you got real trouble when you have 3 other running backs running down on you and the O-line's going, because that's what happened the third quarter. Third quarter was a different level for them this year, I think.
Yeah, couple things. First of all, he still ran for over 800 yards, still led the team in rushing. I mean, we've talked about it. It's fewer design runs, but more scrambles. And really, that's, his scramble rate went up. And part of that is, they dropped back more, but it was by design. They wanted more of that. But it wasn't just the running game, though. I think it was very clear what they tried to do in the second half. I mean, first of all, first half, Houston blitzed the heck out of them. And what they were doing is they were trying to take shots. I mean, not necessarily just throwing 50-yard passes, but they were trying to push the ball down the field. It was very evident they wanted to be aggressive. And as Lamar, kind of laid out, and John Harbaugh talked about it at halftime as well, a few other players in the post-game locker room, it just got to a point where it's like, look, we need some more quick game. We need to get the ball out more quickly here. We need some shorter routes, some slants, hitches, different things along those lines, instead of these slower developing routes that just weren't, Lamar wasn't having time in the pocket. And it wasn't that the offensive line wasn't blocking at all. It's just Houston was sending 5 guys or 6 guys on occasion. And you get to a point based on how it's schemed up that, you're not going to be able to protect long enough to develop those longer developing routes for those guys to get open. So, it wasn't even that they came out running the ball. They came out with the quick passing game on that first drive. Go look at it. Quick pass. Lamar Jackson running. Another quick pass, incomplete, and then 15-yard scramble, boom, touchdown. Now, I'll also say Devin Duvernay's kick return on a short kickoff put them on a short field, so they got a little bit of a jolt there. But for me, it was much more about pivoting to a short passing game, and then by design, Houston had to back off in the blitz a little bit, and then that put you in a position where you could start really pounding the rock and running the ball more. So I think it was very complimentary in that way. I don't think it was just, hey, let's run the ball, because again, look at that first drive right out of the gate. They continued to throw. It was just shorter throws. They went to a little more quick game. Not totally dissimilar to what we saw back all the way back in week 2 when the Ravens were banged up on their O-line and had lost J.K. Dobbins and they were facing the Bengals. And I thought it was a case of they're not going to be able to run the ball just straight up. So they came out and threw quick passes. And then as time went on, as the game progressed, they were able to lean into the run. And that's really what they did in that second half. So I think
But they couldn't stop the run, I guess is my point. My point is once it started that you can run all you want, but you get stopped. But with this team, I'm always questioning the offensive line and the age and the rest really did the offensive line a lot of good. Zeitler looked fresh. He looked like he wanted to win a playoff game. These guys like Moses, guys like Stanley, they've been hearing it a long time. I saw Falele out there running around, and the pass rush got after Lamar early. I mean, it was effective what they did in the first half. It's very effective.
Yeah. I think the offensive line played well, and again, they adjusted. They saw many more quicker, shorter routes to offset that blitz. And for as much success as Houston had with their blitz in the first quarter or in the first half, and specifically in that second quarter, where 3 straight 3-and-outs for the Ravens offense to close the first half. I mean, you have to go back to maybe the second half of the week 5 loss at Pittsburgh to see their offense struggle over the course of a half the way they did. Not just, looking at it in terms of points, but for them to not move the ball the way that they did. 4 3-and-outs. You have to go back to second half of that Pittsburgh game back in week 5 when the Orioles were getting ready for game 2 of the division series. That's how long it had been to see the offense struggle to that degree for a full half. So
we don't even know who the punter is half the time. Right? Most of the people in the city don't know who Jordan Stat. Literally, he doesn't punt enough. He doesn't have. Sam Cook was here forever, and then he punts and doesn't punt well in big games. So all of a sudden, you're like, we haven't cared so much about our punter this year in general terms. And then, the special teams breakdown that put them in a position, made everybody nervous. You weren't nervous because you're like, oh, this kid's moving the ball. You feel like he can move the ball, and you feel like he had weapons, and that would be available, and there's no Marlon Humphrey, and there's and the weather and all of that playing into it. But the special teams play was the play that sort of had us nervous at halftime because other than that, the Texans didn't look like they were going to score 31 points.
Sure. That's where, as much as we focused on Lamar Jackson, and rightfully so. That's been the story for the better part of, not even the better part. His entire career is winning in January and being able to break through in January. And for all the regular season accolades and success and high level of play, that translating and carrying over to January. So it did on Saturday night. So that's the lead story. But this defense, they held Houston to 3 points. The Texans did not get inside the red zone once. They moved the ball here and there, but they'd get to about the 40-yard line, the 35-yard line, and the Ravens would stop them. And I thought it was even more impressive to be able to do that considering they did not get any sacks, even though they got plenty of pressure on C.J. Stroud. And that's Saturday night was a great example of not just judging a pass rush based on sacks, because they didn't get any sacks, but if you go and look at the next gen stats and PFF and all the different metrics, you could see how much pressure they got on Stroud and moving him off his spot, making him throw a split second quicker than he needed to, making him hold the ball or run around more than he wanted to on other routes. They did a phenomenal job, but to do that without a sack, without a takeaway all night, although certainly Kyle Hamilton was thinking about not a dropped interception, but on a deflection. He had a great opportunity to catch an interception there. But this defense, and that's why I said, as much as the focus is going to be on Lamar versus Mahomes, and look, they're two of the biggest stars the league's seen in the last quarter century. I love the opportunity for this Ravens defense to have a chance to see if you can shut down Patrick Mahomes, see if you can stop the Kansas City offense that we know is not peak Kansas City that we've seen in recent years, but certainly played better the last couple of weeks than they were playing at the end of the regular season. But the Ravens defense, they've been doing this all year, right? And the one thing that I know we talked about with Houston, as much as CJ Stroud was a good story and Nico Collins was a good story, they couldn't run the ball. And I've said it over and over, even though this Ravens run defense, relatively speaking, I've used the term relative a lot. The run defense had been the relative weakness. Houston's running game was not nearly good enough to think that they were going to be able to run effectively on the Ravens, and they didn't. I mean, about half their rushing yardage came on one play, one run by Devin Singletary. Otherwise, they completely shut down the Texans' run. And if you're that one-dimensional, it's going to be
With a
really
rookie
tough for your.
quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be almost
On the
impossible.
road
Yeah,
when it's
yeah.
15
Against this
degrees.
defense,
Yeah.
right. I mean, that's going to be so tough. So hats off to the Ravens defense. Hats off to Mike McDonald. And I thought really the key for me, talked a lot about the linebackers. We've talked a lot about the secondary all year, but I thought their front, I thought the defensive line played really, really well. Again, I get it. No sacks. But if you look at that consistently, Matabike was putting heat. The edge rushers are putting heat on Stroud. So there was a lot of disruption, even if there weren't a lot of, there weren't the takedowns, there weren't quarterback sacks. They did a heck of a job up front. And again, a big reason why, even with that unsettling first half offensively and with the special teams, it was 10-10, and ultimately they were going to be fine as they came out and scored 24 points and blew them out.
All right, Luke and I are going to be at it all week. We have just a litany of guests here this week. I mean, Brandon Stokely, Kim Herring, Joe Flacco, Marvin Lewis, Brian Billy, just on and on and on and on. Peter King's coming on this week. We got all sorts of people. We're doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour, but we're doing Crab Cake Row beginning on February 5th. It will replace our traditional Radio Row visits of 28 years of going on the road and doing this. If the Ravens win this week, Luke will be in Las Vegas all week. Viva! I'm going to send him out there with my Elvis shirt. I hope it fits you. I have some belt buckles, too, if you need some Elvis at the Hilton, at the Tailhook Hilton. You've never been to Vegas, right, Luke? Is that correct?
I have not. I have not been to Las Vegas. So just need the
boy.
Ravens to take care of business, right?
Oh, boy. All right. Well, you'll be working too much to take advantage of all the cheap beer and, all the entertainment, the nightlife. But we're going to be doing the day life from 9 until 5. This is what you do when you're 55 and you've been thrown out by the team illicitly and you have to come up with something else. What we're going to do is we're going to service 100 charities during Crab Cake Row. It is a cup of soup or bowl. It's very simple. You come out, you get free soup, you bring stuff for the Maryland Food Bank, and you hang out. And if the Ravens are in the Super Bowl, you wear purple. I'll give you a See Joe Throw sign or a Ray 252 sign. I'm not doing any Lamar in Las Vegas or any Thriller show. I'm not doing any of that. What we're doing is 100 charities. It's all brought to you by friends at the Maryland Lottery. I'll have Raven scratch-offs to give away. I will have snaps to give away all week long, everywhere we are. So we're going to be at Fadley's. I'm wearing the shirt at Lexington Market on Monday. We're going to be at Costas on Tuesday. Going to be at Coco's on Wednesday, at State Fair in Catonsville on Thursday, and Pappas on Friday. That's all happening 2 weeks from now, all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Window Nation and our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Plenty of football ahead. Plenty more with Luke. Plenty more on Patrick Mahomes. And I'm declaring it Taylor Swift week here in Baltimore. We are WNST, AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore positive and Travis Kelce.